and cordial solution to their problem. However, enjoyed the following privileges of leadership and honour: presiding over house meetings where consultations relating to serious issues were conducted and marriage contracts were announced. The standard he monopolized in his hand issues relevant to war launching. Doorkeeping of Al-Kaaba. He was the only one eligible to open its gate and was responsible for its service and protection. Providing water for the pilgrims. This means that he used to fill basins sweetened by dates and raisins for the pilgrims to drink. Feeding pilgrims. This means making food for pilgrims who could not afford it. Even imposed on Quraysh an annual land tax paid at the season of pilgrimage for food. It is noteworthy, however, that singled out a son of his for honour and prestige, though he was not his elder son, and entrusted him with such responsibilities as chairing of a Nadwa house to the standard, the doorkeeping of Al-Kaaba, providing water and food for pilgrims. Due to the fact that Qusay's deeds were regarded as unquestionable and his orders inviolable, his death gave no rise to conflicts among his sons, but it later did among his grandchildren, for no sooner than had died, his sons began to have rows with their cousins, sons of which would have given rise to dissension and fighting among the whole tribe of Quraysh, had it not been for a peace treaty whereby posts were reallocated so as to preserve feeding and providing water for pilgrims. For the sons of Abd, while house, the flag and the doorkeeping of were maintained for the sons of Abd. The sons of, however, cast the lot for their charge and consequently left the charge of food and water given to Hashim bin, upon whose death the charge was taken over by a brother of his called Al-Muttalib, and afterwards by the Prophet's grandfather, whose sons assumed this position until the rise of Islam, during which Abbas was in charge. Many other posts were distributed among people of Quraysh for establishing the pillars of a new democratic petite state with government, offices and councils similar to those of today. Enlisted as follows are some of these posts. Casting the lots for the idols was allocated by Bani Jumma. Noting of offers and sacrifices, settlement of disputes, and relevant issues were to lie in the hands of Bani Hassan. Consultation was to go to Bani Asad. Organization of blood money and fines was with Bani Taim. Bearing the national banner was with Bani Umayyah. The military institute, footmen and cavalry would be Bani Makhzum's responsibility. Bani Adi would function as foreign mediators. Rulership in Pan-Arabia, we had previously mentioned the Cartanide and Adnanide immigrations and divisions of Arabia between these two tribes. Those tribes dwelling near Hira were subordinate to the Arabian king of Hira, while those dwelling in Syria, semi-desert, were under dominion of the Arabian Ghazalin king, a sort of dependency that was in reality formal rather than actual. However, those living in the Hindu deserts enjoyed full autonomy. These tribes in fact had heads chosen by the whole tribe, which was which was a demi-government based on tribal solidarity and collective interest in defense of land and property. Heads of tribes enjoyed dictatorial privileges similar to those of kings, and were rendered full obedience and subordination in both war and peace. Rivalry among cousins for rulership, however, often drove them to outdo one another in entertaining guests, affecting generosity, wisdom, and chivalry for the sole purpose of outranking their rivals and gaining fame. Among people, especially poets who were the official spokesmen at the time, heads of tribes and masters had special claims to spoils of war, such as the quarter of the spoils, whatever he chose for himself or found on his way back, or even the remaining indivisible spoils. The political situation, the three Arab regions adjacent to foreigners, suffered great weakness and inferiority. The people there were either masters or slaves, rulers of subordinates, masters especially. The foreigners had claim to every advantage. Slaves had nothing but responsibilities to shoulder. In other words, arbitrary or autocratic rulership brought about encroachment on the rights of subordinates, ignorance, oppression, inequity, injustice, and hardship, and turning them into people groping in darkness and ignorance. This fertile land, which rendered its fruits to the rulers and men of power to extravagantly dissipate on their pleasures and enjoyments, whims and desires, tyranny and aggression. The tribes living near these regions were fluctuating between Syria and Iran, whereas those living inside Arabia were disunited and governed by tribal conflicts and racial and religious disputes. They had neither a king to sustain their independence, nor a supporter to seek advice from, or depend upon in hardships. The rulers of Hijaz, however, were greatly esteemed and respected by the Arabs, and were considered as rulers and servants of the religious center. Rulership of Hijaz was in fact a mixture of secular and official presidents, as well as religious leadership. They ruled among the Arabs in the name of religious leadership, and always monopolized the custodianship of the holy sanctuary and its neighborhood. They looked after the interest of Al-Kaaba visitors and were in charge of putting Abraham's code into effect. They even had such offices and departments like those of the parliaments of today. However, they were too weak to carry the heavy burden, as this evidently came to light during the Abyssinian Ethiopian invasion.